Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1964A, and today's date is September 8th, 2019, and the title of the episode is Central Bank Plan Blocked, Economy Controlled by Patriots. Now, before we get started, I wanted to talk about protecting yourself. Nothing invokes full-scale panic like Wall Street panicking, but quietly, secretly, U.S. corporate insiders, they're preparing. CNN reported $600 million of stocks has been sold each day in August. This only happened previously before the 2008 crash. Meanwhile, gold is rocketing, and demand is at a 3-year high, according to the World Gold Council. Precious metals, gold, silver, as an IRA or 401k rollover will keep you safe and help you ride out the latest storm. Call Noble Gold right now at 877-646-5347, or you can hit the link below and you'll get the free gold and silver investment guide that has been downloaded over 50,000 times. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as we know, the deep state, the central bank, they are going to do whatever they possibly can to stop the Patriots. They don't want anyone leaving their system, period. I mean, let's take, for example, UK. What is going on there? The elite, the establishment, the central bank, the deep state operatives, they're pushing Boris Johnson to make sure that there is absolutely no way the UK can leave the EU. Because, as we know, it would be a complete and utter disaster for the EU, for the central bank establishment, for the elite, the deep state. It would be a disaster for them because they would be exposed. Other countries would realize, wait a minute, they're doing a lot better than we are. They're not in that much debt. They're making free trade deals. What's going on here? And why is their economy improving? Something's not right. And we can see with certain individuals within the UK, well, they're not working for the best interests of the people. Actually, they're working for the EU. Now, Lord MacDonald, he said, and he held the senior prosecutor post between 2003 and 2008, said that, listen, if Boris Johnson defies the law, he could be held in contempt and he could be sent to prison. This is how desperate they are getting. Now, Dominic Raab has said that Boris Johnson is sticking to his guns and he's not going to deviate, saying that despite the efforts of Jeremy Corbyn's surrender bill to stop no-deal Brexit, the UK will leave the EU on October 31st, come what may. Now, Mr. Raab said his government will adhere to the law, but suggested that the government could work around Corbyn's surrender bill, saying they will, to test a limit, what it does actually lawfully require. He added that the legislation is lousy, and he said all they're trying to do is delay. And it actually effectively forces us to accept conditions from the EU, however vindictive, punitive, or harsh they may be. So actually what these individuals, these MPs, what they've done is they've placed the control with the EU. So they took the control away from the people, from the UK government, and placed it with non-elected leaders. Think about that for a second. Think of what they've done. Now, the people, they voted in a referendum, fair and square, and they said, listen, we want to leave the EU. And now they're saying, you know something, because of what Theresa May and what you've done, no deal is the way to go. Boris Johnson was elected because his promise was to leave the EU with a no-deal Brexit. And now those same individuals who've lost, who have no real say, they're passing laws against what the people want, and they're handing the EU the power. I mean, this is how desperate they are getting. Will this work? Most likely not. This will be a big fail, just like everything else that we've seen. Yes, the UK will eventually leave, and this will be the destruction of the EU. Other countries will catch on. Italy, looking very closely at this, Hungary, and the rest are saying, hey, let's do it. Let's see what happens here. Now, we all know how the deep state works, how the mainstream media works here in the United States and around the world, but especially here in the United States, to convince the American people of something that is not true. Think about this. We know that if you repeat something enough times with many news outlets saying the same thing over and over and over, well, it convinces the people that it must be true then. And then what do they normally do? They put out surveys after this. They magically appear to back up the mainstream media and to try to convince the people that, look, the majority of the people are doing exactly what the mainstream media says. And if a large number of people are saying it, well, then we must go along with it. We can't counter it. That's what they've done. This is the formula they always use. And we see this happening right now. That exact formula, which is being used for the economy. Now, the mainstream media, they've been pushing a recession is coming. The recession is coming in 2020. All the news outlets got the talking points, and they continued repeating this over and over. And then we know what comes next. It's a survey to prove that the talking points are correct and the people believe there is a recession coming and who to blame. So let's go back to the first part here. They had articles, the mainstream media was repeating it, that we're heading into a 2020 recession over and over and over. They knew that they only had a certain period of time to convince the people. And we know that they started to backtrack a little bit here because we showed these articles on Friday. And they'll have more of these articles to protect themselves. But they're going to try to push this until the very end. And what we see happening right now is a survey that came out to back that there is going to be a recession. And if there is a recession, the people are going to blame who? Trump. Now, we need to remember that Trump has been contradicting the Fed, putting the blame on the Fed, that if the Fed does not do what Trump wants, the economy will fail. But the survey actually protects the Fed and blames Trump. Now, why would they do this? Because they're trying to push the recession agenda, because they don't have control over the Fed anymore. The Patriots do. And the only way to cause a recession is to convince the people. If the people live in fear of a recession, they will not spend. They will not make big purchases. They will contract. They will not expand. And this is what they were hoping. So this survey was produced right on schedule. And this is according to a Harvard-Harris poll. It says 57% of Americans would blame Trump if the U.S. slid into a recession in the next year. Additionally, they note that only 33% said that the Federal Reserve Bank, which influences the economy, for example, by setting the federal funds bank lending rate, would be to blame. So 57% say Trump is to blame, and only 33% say the Fed is to blame. And we know this is completely the opposite. We know that Trump has been setting this up, and we know that the people, they understand that the Fed controls the economy. The Fed is in control because this is an illusionary economy that they created. It's manipulated, and Trump has been pointing out that, listen, every time I tell them to do something, the economy does well. When they don't listen to me, the economy does poorly. But this survey is trying to flip it, and this is right on schedule. And we know that this is going to be a big fail. They're too late to the party. Why? Because they only had this small window to push the economy over the edge. It has failed. The Fed is already making plans to cut the rate. The Fed has already purchased bonds. The Fed is going to announce stimulus. And we know in the beginning stages of this that when you lower rates, what happens? The economy takes off. Now, I know the mainstream media was out there and they were trying to convince everyone if the rates are cut, we're going to go into a recession. Well, actually, no, it is the opposite of what they're saying. And we've said this for a very long time. It's always the opposite of what they say. When they increase the rates, they hit a tipping point, and that causes the domino effect, and then they quickly lower the rates. Again, they flipped it. And why did they do this? Because they're trying to convince the people that if the Fed listens to Trump, we're going to head into a recession. And by putting out these articles over and over and over and mentioning it in the mainstream media, they're trying to force the recession. And they know that once they cut the rates and stimulus starts, the economy will not go into a recession. This is why we already saw these articles where they're backtracking a little bit. They're trying to cover themselves. Because once it happens, Trump and the Patriots, they know they have a short period of time before the economy really starts to suffer. And this short period of time will allow Trump and the Patriots to get reelected once again. And then, once reelected, they can move the agenda forward by blaming the Fed, by transitioning the economy, and by doing everything at an accelerated pace. The deep state, the central bank, their push is too late. Patriots are in control of the economy, of the central bank, and of course, out in the mainstream media and out in the public, optics are very important. It can't look like they're in control. This is why Trump continually argues. But we know what's going on here. We understand that we're in an illusionary economy created by this central bank, and their illusionary economy is collapsing. They're exposed. There's nothing to protect them. And everything will be blamed on them in the end. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.